So, how is everyone? I hope you're all well. It's Monday. And in the UK, a lot of the British parents today are cheering. They're cheering as the kids return to school until the next strike. But that's for another video. What are we talking about now? We're talking about Brian KOHBERGER. Look, we're not going to talk about him every day, but we've just got to get something straight. I see a lot of mainstream media are putting videos out. They're putting a lot of things and focus on whether Brian KOHBERGER could walk, and they're talking about some of the evidence that's come up and that this basically condemns him, and there's mix everywhere you go. Wherever you go, there's a kind of a mix, and everyone's waiting till June. But there's two things we've got to think about. First of all is what's going to happen in June. Now, first of all, what we've got to understand is June is just the preliminary hearing. So the preliminary hearing is going to be when they put everything out. They're going to lay all the shit bare, and they are going to get to look at it and decide whether what is there warrants taking this to trial. And then after that, they've got a few days in order to make a recommendation that this will become a death penalty trial. And Brian KOHBERGER will then enter his plea. Not in that order, but that's the process. The process is preliminary hearing, lay everything down, and then it will be decided whether it goes to trial, and that's when these things will then happen. We'll get a plea, we'll get a potential plea deal, who knows? That could be on the cards. Let's not forget, look, even though I'm innocent until proven guilty, and we're going to touch on this in a second, but ultimately, nobody knows anything better than Brian KOHBERGER himself, and that's an important factor to remember. Nobody knows anything better than what Brian knows. And Brian, if he is clever, if there is any smartness in him, he could see potentially how this could play out in the future. So he could be 1, 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of everybody. But that doesn't mean it's a good thing for him. That means that he could potentially see his own fate. And who knows, it has been argued that perhaps this was his swan song. He wanted to go out with a bang. Some have considered that potentially he planned this all along and he wanted to fight the system. He wanted to be the smartest man in the room finally and prove that he could indeed beat the system. And that's what brings me to my next point. Because what a lot of people have got to understand is there is a difference, a massive difference, between proving Brian KOHBERGER was there at the scene and proving that he did the crime. Now, it may not be that they have to just overcome Brian potentially not being the person who did this, but could he put a spanner in the works by putting enough evidence for it that someone else could have done it? Could that be the argument? Could that be the reasonable doubt that somebody else could have done it? Whether he was there, whether he's got valid reasons for being there. Now, those reasons could be nefarious. Let's not forget that we have touched on numerous times about narcotics, so on and so forth. Now, could you say, honestly, beyond reasonable doubt, that he was not there on that particular night for a pre-arranged meeting to hook up with someone to get narcotics? Could it be argued that the car in the footage that we see is not his car? It is another car. I'm not saying that his car weren't there, but the footage that they have is not his car. Could it be argued that some of the things that have been brought forward and the mistakes that have been made could be used to the defence's advantage? But like I say, it's a very different kettle of fish when you're trying to prove that someone did the crime than just trying to prove they were there. Because then all you're doing is your circumstantial evidence then comes into play. Is it just that, hold on a second, because he was there, he must have been the person who done this? Why? Because nobody else could have done it. Is that then when we will see the 8-hour delay come into play? Could it be argued that Brian KOHBERGER could have indeed gone into that house, and could there have been another reason for him to be inside that house? But what then happened after he left. Because we don't effectively know at this stage how long or the exact time of death, but we do know that there was a delay between when he left and when law enforcement came. And we also know that law enforcement were not the first people there either, that there was other students, there was other friends that attended that property. So could the defense utilize that to their advantage? Prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it's not a plausible, albeit some may argue that, look, you're pissing into the wind with this one, Harsh. But I'm saying, how could you say, and if you was a parent and you had to put your child's life on the line, could you 100% say, again, without any doubt and any worry, any concern for the child's life that you are putting on the line for this, to say that nothing could have happened between when Brian Kohberger left that property to when 911 were called? Could it be argued that that was the perfect way to create this perfect crime? Is that how he could have been framed? He was there, he was called to the area, he was called to go to the house, he went to the house. He left the house, and at the point where he left the house, everyone was fine. But again, there could have been an argument. Who do we hear? Do we hear the thuds? We hear the dog barking, but the dog was there. He was there all along. Murphy was there. The screams, everything, and what I'm saying is, guys, it's just reasonable doubt, and you've just got to tweak on something inside one jury member. One jury member. I still say that the 8-hour delay from when Brian Kohberger left, if he is indeed our man, which they are going to try to push that he is, then why such delay? And this isn't an attack on any individual. What I'm saying is that time frame, that time doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for anyone. Could it be argued that Brian Kohberger could have left there and at least one of those victims could have been okay, could have been saved if there'd have been more due diligence and 911 could have been called? Again, we don't know the facts and we're just speculating, because I'm sure that this will be covered in the documentation. They'll know the injuries that were received and what the likelihood was of someone surviving said injuries, or indeed whether they could have been saved. But look, there's a long way to go, and there is a huge difference between just simply proving someone was there on the night and proving that while they were there, this is what they did. And that's what they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And like I say, could you, hand on heart, if you had to bet your child's life on it, could you say that you know 100% that Brian Kohberger did this, and you would be happy to put that to the test? Now, I can't. And I think I've been clear as to why I can't. Now, I'm not saying that Brian Kohberger had nothing to do with it, but I struggle massively to think that Brian Kohberger completely acted alone. I struggle to think that there can't be something else in the background. Perhaps he was coerced to go over there, or there was something else set up and someone else was in that property. Again, the car. Is this car going to be the Petri dish on wheels that we think? But what if there just was no evidence in that car in terms of blood DNA? If they found nothing, and the only thing you've got to go by are the stuff that can be planted into a car. Identification found inside a glove. What if that glove has got no DNA on it? And the only DNA is on the identification that just happens to be found when they search the car. Why would Brian Kohberger have left this evidence at his home or his parents' home? The murder weapon's gone. Why would he not stash everything together? Again, it could just be a mistake. One of many, many mistakes that we're supposed to believe that he made. And again, I'm not saying the guy's innocent. Please don't think I'm saying he's innocent. I'm just saying that for me, if I was on that jury, there would not be a way that I could say beyond a reasonable doubt that not only was Brian Kohberger the person who drove over here all on his own, committed this heinous act, and then left. I personally couldn't do it and condemn a guy to death. I'm sure there's plenty of people who could, but for me at the moment, until the preliminary hearing, I just can't do it. And I don't think there's going to be anything else come out between now and June that's convinced me or anyone otherwise. Could be surprised. Who knows what else Ashley Banfield knows or who she knows and what's going to come out. But I can't see anything changing, anything happening. Let me know down below where you are with it. Could you, if you was on the jury now, which way would you go? If you had to bet someone's life on it, could you genuinely say that he is the guy and he is the only guy, he's the only person who needs to be held accountable for this? I'll catch you in the next one.